We are delighted and excited to present Design Thinking, from Collaboration to Clarity session, as an approach to deal with an uncertain world and to come up with human-centered solution. The session is organized within the Indonesia and United States cross-boundary cooperation, represented by Universitas Pertamina and the New Jersey Institute of Technology. This session provides an insight on how to generate groundbreaking solutions in unpredictable circumstances, and on how to apply a collection of hands-on methods to help find innovative answers. As an increasingly popular approach for creative problem solving, design thinking gives an advantage for those who can implement it effectively.
Greetings from New Jersey Institute of Technology. My name is Mike Smullen. I'm the Executive Director of the Alumni Relations Office here at NJIT. It's my pleasure to welcome you to today's seminar, Design Thinking, from Collaboration to Clarity. Now I'd like to introduce Stephen Gomez, Program Manager in the Martin Tuchman School of Management.
Thank you, Mike. Welcome all to our seminar. Welcome to the Martin Tuchman School of Management. My name is Stephen Gomez. I am the Program Development Manager at the School of Management at NJIT. For the past 2 years, I've also served as a professor of practice, teaching accounting, finance, management information systems. And today, I have the honor to have you as our guest. Professor Wayne Fox will be taking us through today's topic, Design Thinking, Collaboration to Clarity. Specifically focusing on the tenets of design thinking and its applications in business. Before I do that, I want to take a moment to introduce Professor Fox. Professor Fox is a distinguished and accomplished business professional, professor at MTSM, and entrepreneur. Professor Fox is a true definition of a Renaissance man, holding his JD from Rutgers Law School in Camden, and both his BA and MBA from the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania. His accomplishments alone would take a lot of time to go over, but to highlight, Professor Fox had multiple successful business careers in finance, telecommunications, and as a successful entrepreneur. In addition to his work in the finance sectors and in telecom, Professor Fox is an accomplished pilot, volunteer, mentor, and probably the most challenging role, a grandfather. Wayne, I want to thank you for taking the time to share with us today your thoughts and insights and experience around the concept and process of design thinking. So often when we read and learn about new models for innovation, ideation, and business, there's often gaps between theory and practical application. However, when it comes to this concept of design thinking, there can be very practical and approachable application. So for the next 20 minutes or so, we're going to have a conversation, really focusing and helping us to understand your interpretation based on your experience in terms of what is design thinking and how it can be used in practical business. Most folks are always looking, most people in business are looking for ways in which to gain a competitive advantage. And oftentimes it's changing the way we think and how we go about approaching innovation that provides the biggest advantages. So let's first start by framing the context of this discussion and help us create a baseline understanding of what design thinking is. So if you could you please share with us your understanding of what you feel design thinking is and what it can help us to accomplish in business?
Thank you, Steve. It's nice to be with you. A number of years ago, a company called IDEO, came up with an idea of using design thinking, and this concept has been adopted by IBM. And my experience with design thinking is as an instructor for the IBM Skills Academy. And we use design thinking in almost every session that we use, whether it's blockchain, data science, cybersecurity, there's a number of different courses that are offered by the IBM Skills Academy. There are 25,000 employees at IBM that use design thinking on a regular basis with their clients. And it's an extensive process of discovery, of being able to figure out where you're going with your company when you design new products. And my view of design thinking is that it's a collaborative activity. It requires a group of people to get together, and it helps to solve business problems. And the output of the design thinking process is hopefully clarity, to get clear on what your goals are, who your customers are, what their needs are, and how you can best approach addressing those needs for the clients.
Thank you. You know, in our conversations, you've often referred to design thinking as a highly focused and sophisticated business game or simulation, but really ultimately for the purpose of collaboration, as you just explained. Can you help us understand sort of what you mean by this model, this gamification of this process? And perhaps you can provide us an example.
Sure. The process of design thinking is a mediated process. Usually you have someone who is skilled in the process of design thinking, who is external to the group, or not trying to solve the problem themselves, but being a facilitator. So the idea is you get a facilitator, whether it's someone from IBM to do that, or somebody from IDEO, or someone from Martin Tuchman School of Management. When I run these sessions, we get everybody together and we explain some basic rules. I want to show you some of the slides that we use from the IBM Skills Academy. I'm just going to go through a couple of them, and then we'll stop and have more discussion. So in design thinking for data science, it's a workshop. It says it would be great if, or I'm really excited about, or this workshop has so much potential because this is a new way of working. It excites me because, so that you have your hopes and then your fears. I'm concerned that, or this product would be great except, or this workshop is fine idea, but it really doesn't account for something. And unfortunately, the way we work. And so people express their hopes and fears. So this is a very human process. And the process uses sticky notes. So everybody comes up with ideas, they draw pictures, they cluster the ideas together, and it's a not a high-tech approach, it's a very simplistic approach. And each team plays back their views on things in 1.5 minutes. So it takes a day to do a good design thinking workshop, but it's a fast-paced activity. Everybody uses 1.5 minutes. So when do we need to use design thinking? It's about people. You have to ask yourself, what problems are you solving? Whose pain are you addressing? What need is driving that solution? What does a solution look like, and is it feasible? So with those ideas, rather than ideating around, is this going to solve the problem? It should be, what problem are we trying to solve? So design thinking takes a step back and says, what are we trying to solve? And then there are rules about how this works. So you can see that you can make this into a game almost. And so I want to just emphasize that there's a whole structured process of how we go about doing that. And later in this video, Steve and I will discuss those other aspects.
Absolutely, and thank you for that, Wayne. So it really does seem that, you know, collaboration is at the core of this process, and so we identify, you know, help us sort of understand, you know, when we're talking about collaboration to clarity, going through this iterative process. Help us walk through sort of how a team sort of goes from ideation to clarity. Because you explain it in many of your classes as sort of this process, and so perhaps you can just walk us through, how does collaboration lead to clarity in this process?
Let's go back to the slides for a second, and we'll just take a look at I'll try to quickly flip through the slides. So the enterprise design thinking, you understand the user's needs in the context of the overall business objectives or stated problems. You form an intent and you deliver outcomes at speed and scale. The idea is that you want to try things quickly, see if they're going to work. If they fail, you've learned something, you've moved on to the next activity. It's a human-centered outcomes require empathy for the people that you serve. So you have to think about what's the problem from the customer's point of view, from the user's point of view. And so you want to start with some kind of business understanding, a business problem, study, and solution. And you they use this in San Francisco because they had increasing property crime rates. So they had Maria was a data scientist, Sally's a data journalist, and Bob is a business sponsor. And so they went through this problem that San Francisco is one of America's grittiest cities. In some neighborhoods, people only use drugs. They defecate on the street and flagrantly steal. And it feels as though law enforcement has turned a blind eye to many lesser offenses. While violent crime has been on the decline, some violent crimes have been rising, like the one in the city's hill. So you can see that larceny, theft from motor vehicles was increasing. So they use a sample persona of Clarice, who lives and works near Howard Street, an affluent and tech-laden section of San Francisco, and she had to endure grit on her way to and from work every day. She's determined to be active in her community and see what sections or streets the greatest number of police incidents, and if the police calming activities is helping a deteriorating situation. So we go through a scenario. I'm not going to read you the slide, but you see Clarice, and she's got pain points about shoplifting, stress, safety. She's trying to find answers. She's trying to be more active. She's looking for skills and knowledge. And so you take a point of view of a client, and then you, in the case of data science, we were using the databases to find the information that they needed and then be able to work through this. So the ground rules for doing a design thinking is that you have to write before you talk. You write sketches or sketch lots of your ideas on sticky notes before talking about them. During discussions, you capture the main points on the sticky notes and post them on the wall. There are no bad ideas. You start big, you diverge to get everyone's ideas out there, remix to discuss, cluster, and seek patterns, and then converge to determine the strongest ideas. You try to stay focused on your user. You tell stories about how the users, to keep them at the center of your attention. Everybody participates. Everybody has a Sharpie, pen, and everyone has a pad of sticky notes. You try to stay engaged, avoid side conversations. You use a parking lot to capture issues that are off topic. In other words, you take your things and you put them on another board. Start on time, stay on time. To meet our goals, we need to watch the clock and stick to the plan. And yes, it's easy to play the devil's advocate. Instead of dismissing the ideas that your teammates suggest, push yourself to build on them. So that gives you an idea of kind of the scenario, the setup, and the basic ground rules. So design thinking works like a game because you basically have you have some sticky notes. Everybody has a pad of sticky notes. Everybody has a Sharpie pen, and you draw on your sticky notes. You make drawings, and you can then put them up on a storyboard up on the wall.
So Wayne, thank you for taking us through those steps. The way in which you present this process, it seems like a relatively low-tech sort of approach to addressing high-tech issues, at least from a talking through phase. You reference, using data science and actually going through the data and understand that. For individuals that would be interested in learning more about this process and bringing it either to their own enterprise or to their business, you as an instructor, I know this is not something that happens overnight. So perhaps you can just sort of take us through a little bit of what is the expectation that somebody, who's looking to kind of learn about this process, get to the point of being able to facilitate it and use it effectively. How should they be tempering their expectations in terms of kind of getting into this? Is this something that's going to happen overnight? Is it going to take a long time? Perhaps you can walk us through in your experience what it will take.
The best way to learn about design thinking is to go through a design thinking workshop. So you can learn this in a day. You can get the materials. You can understand the process, but it's an experiential process. It's not enough for me to just describe it to you. It's one of those things that you have to experience. You try to live it for a day. We try to use scenarios of building teams. We ask a question. We imagine that we have a particular technology or some kind of problem that the customer has, and then we try to get as many ideas up on the board as we possibly can. So in other words, we try to expand our universe of ideas. And after we've done that, you go through a process of voting on those ideas. Actually, they use more sticky notes, little dots, to vote on the things that you think are important. And what it does is it brings the group back. So from all of the information, and it focuses now back on what are the different things that we can try. So I call them the patterns of possibility, that each person comes with a possibility of something that can be done in the future. And we look at those patterns, and that's how we learn. We learn through examining patterns of different processes. And so it's a very natural process. We don't need to have computers and cell phones and all kinds of high-tech things, because human beings, we're just us. We use our voice. We talk to each other. We communicate by using the sticky notes. And what we're trying to do is get it down to a human process, not some automated process where you're trying to, just use a machine. Oftentimes you'll get engineers in a room and they say, well, let's try to figure out how we're going to just solve this problem. And the first thing they want to do is get the paper out and start drawing their solution. Well, design thinking is taking a step back and saying, before we start trying to solve the problem that we think the customer has, why don't we think about this a little bit? Why don't we figure out what it is that they really need? What pain are they feeling? Because when somebody wants something to change, it's usually because they're feeling uncomfortable about the way it is right now. And so what we want to do is we want to imagine or understand. Oftentimes in design thinking workshops, you can actually invite the customers to sit with you and go through the whole process in your design thinking. So if you're a businessman, you can, once you master the design thinking process, and you can have one person who is the facilitator for running the sessions, bring your customers in, have them meet the people that are solving their problems, and let them work collaboratively together, and you'll find that it works pretty well.
No, absolutely. And, people who are watching this and are sort of interested in bringing this to their business and industry, is this applicable across, multiple industries? Perhaps you can say, as a professor, you bring this approach into the classroom. You help us understand how universally applicable rather, this process can be.
Companies use it all the time in almost any industry. If you have a customer and the customer has needs, you can use design thinking. So it doesn't have to be a high-tech business. It could be a business where you make fashion designs of clothing, and you have the fashion show in New York. People can use design thinking. It's almost a play on words because the designers can use design thinking. It's a way of thinking, and so if once you learn how the process works, it makes you think about things in a slightly different point of view, to think about and have empathy for your customers. So, Steve, you can use this for any industry. I don't think there's any limitations on being able to use this process for a financial sector, for manufacturing, for retail sales. All companies have different kinds of problems. And this is not designed, though, for standard problems, things that we've, you have an inventory problem, or you have some kind of thing it's a regular ongoing thing. This is really designed for the creativity to try to find new areas to look at, so that you don't just, it's a tool that's not used for everything. You use it for very specific purpose of trying to discover new territory, new ground. I think the one area that we'll talk about is there's a design thinking canvas, and we can talk more about that as a template, the game board, if you will, so that you can learn how to play the game and use design thinking.
Absolutely. And in fact, one of the things I wanted to sort of bring up is that in this new reality of remote engagement, where we have a very sort of a process that seems to work in a collaborative environment where you're physically with people, how have you been able to facilitate this in your classes or in your instruction using remote tools and sort of remotely and digital tools? And I think one is the Canvas. Perhaps you can give us a brief overview.
One of the things that I discovered as I worked with IBM is that they found a company called Mural, M-U-R-A-L, and it's a website that you can subscribe to. By the way, Steve, it's free for professors, so that's a good thing. For a company, you have to pay for it, but if you're a professor, you can get a free Mural canvas, and it's a whole series of. I don't want to do a commercial for Mural, but when you go to the website, you'll see that there's many different kinds of canvases, and design thinking is one of those canvases. You basically have a sample project, you create it on a particular date, and you start with, what's your vision? What does the future look like? What kind of resources and rules do we have? What's our reason for wanting to do this? What's the relationship that we have with our customers and the conditions of those relationships? What roles do we play as officers of the company? How do we create this vision statement? What's the impact of that anticipated conditions? And then who's affected? By coming up with the vision, we can then go to an impact statement and say, what difference will we make? What will change from what we have today that's needed? How are we going to accomplish the change? And so you're trying to imagine how you're going to do this, but the process has to consider the risks. There's always risks in every business. And what incentives do we need to encourage people to change? And so as we think about people, we have the directors of the company, we have the C-suite, we have the officers, we have all the different departments, whether it's finance, operations, engineering, sales and marketing, customer care, production, the shipping and distribution guy, the accounting people, the MIS people, and research and development, among others. So you have all of these different people from different divisions. The idea is that you don't try to pack a room with 100 people to try to do design thinking. You find a small group of people, maybe from each of the functional areas, and you bring them together as a small team, but you're going to have a lot of discussion with them. So this is a very human process. You consider what are all the challenges that are in front of us, what's the challenges to our customers, and you have to come up with what's the opportunity. What am I doing this for? Why am I trying to solve a problem? So what problems will we solve? And then you go through a process of discovery, of doing, as we saw in the data science example, we can look at what do we have in our database? What do we need that we don't have? Do we have sufficient resources to answer the questions? Can we define our problem? And once you've verified the problem, you can start coming up with different solutions. And you once again, you brainstorm all the different possibilities of what solutions we're going to develop. And the idea is just like the lean manufacturing process, the lean process. The idea is you try something, you come up with a minimum viable product as quickly as you can, and you see if it works. You try it out with your customers. You do a beta test, and you see if it works. If it doesn't work, you go back to the drawing board. You try to tinker with it a little bit, and see if you can keep working on this. Thomas Edison said that he found 1,000 ways that a light bulb didn't work, and then he found one way that did. And so the process is, instead of just focusing on one project for 6 months where you're doing a lot of designing and thinking, try to get to something very quickly and see if it works. And if that doesn't work, you learn something of what doesn't work, and the group has more experience, and you value that experience, because learning things and failing actually teaches you something. So we don't fire people just because they fail. Those people become more valuable because they failed, because they learned from that experience. You develop the solution, you deliver your product, and then you're able to tell a story. How will we communicate over the course of the project in order to maintain momentum and support? How are we going to tell the story to the client? And then, of course, the solution is validated. Management, how will we deliver the project and monitor the progress, and what are the key milestones, measures, and the people responsible for each. So this is a total management system, if you will, collapsed into a very short time period of coming up with the ideas, and then it's interspersed over periods of time. So we'll meet at the beginning of the month. We'll try some things. We meet again the next month and see how we're making progress, because not everything can be created overnight. So this is both a short-term and a long-term process, Steve.
Wayne, that's amazing. And thank you for sharing your insights, access, how to get started, some examples, tools to use. Clearly, it is the beginning of a journey into a new way of thinking, into growing your business, being innovative, and trying new things, really to grow, ideate, be lean, and expand your horizons. At the Martin Tuchman School of Management at NJIT, these are the types of tools and technologies and processes that we look to bring into the classroom as we look to engage industry and external partners. This is also something that we look to do and train on. As folks are looking to get started, we encourage folks to reach out. We'll provide contact information at the end of this video. And there's a lot of topics that I think we can continue to expound upon, and I look forward to working with you, Wayne, and seeing how we can bring that to the larger community. Before we sign off, I want to give you an opportunity, if there are any last words, anything that you want to share as it relates to the design thinking process and those interested in moving forward in this area.
We'd be happy to try to facilitate a session because people are, because of the COVID-19, people are in a lot of different places. You can use Mural as a way that you can actually use electronic sticky pads, so that you can actually create a virtual sticky note, and you can put it up on the board. In Mural, they actually allow you to create a 9-foot by 9-foot canvas, if you will. And you can have all different kinds of boards on that, and you can go through this entire process online. So even if you're a half a world away, we could still have an opportunity to interact with you and experiment, to try these things out, to everything that I've shown you today. Some of the material is obviously copyrighted by IBM, and we're bringing it to you under the fair use doctrine of an educational example. And of course, we will try to facilitate any kind of workshops that you'd like to work with us on. So thank you, Steve. It's been great to be with you here today.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Wayne. I want to give a special thank you to Michael Smolin and the Office of Alumni Relations for hosting us on this platform. Again, for those interested in learning more on this topic or looking to engage in any type of formal training opportunity, we invite you to reach out to NJIT and to the Martin Tuchman School of Management. We encourage you to stay tuned for more content on this and other relevant business topics. Again, as we end, Wayne, it's always a pleasure to connect. I learn something new every time we have an opportunity to talk. Thank you for taking the time to share with us your knowledge, your insights, and your experience in this process of design thinking. I also want to give thanks to the Dean of the Martin Tuchman School of Management, Dean Oya Tukel, for encouraging us and for reaching out and for allowing us to create these opportunities for the broader community. We encourage you to reach out. Thank you so much for taking the time today. We'll see you soon.
That is all about the design thinking, collaboration to clarity. Should you have any inquiries regarding the topic, please do not hesitate to drop us an email or contact the number below. In the future, we will organize other insightful sessions to feed your thirst for knowledge. Please stay tuned by following our social medias. We appreciate your time watching our video session.